now more than ever, people need to go within and plug into that cellular memory, plug into divine source, detach as much as possible from the matrix. Hello again, everybody. This is James Bartley, and you're listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. Today, my very special guest is Jolene JoJo Seebacher. JoJo returns as a guest of the Cosmic Switchboard Show. JoJo is an old friend of ours. She is a certified licensed spiritual counselor and teacher specializing in helping targeted individuals program project survivors, including experiences of the love bite, SRA victims, and the newly awakened. Born with her enhanced supernatural abilities, Jolene JoJo Seebacher is also a survivor herself of Black Ops military programming. So without any further ado, Jolene Seebacher, welcome back to the Cosmic Switchboard Show, my friend.
James, I'm so honored to be here talking to you again in such a healthy frame of everything, and you standing by my side through so much of healing through this darkness of mine. So thank you for being my friend, believing in me, and having me on your show. Thank you.
You're quite welcome, Jolene. Your story and your testimony is very powerful. It's very inspirational. You've walked the walk, and some of the lessons you've learned and some of the healing and the necessary changes you had to undergo came about through overcoming challenges. You had to overcome to become. So wherever you want to begin your story, catch us up on what you've been up to, whatever you feel inclined and motivated to talk about. Jolene, the floor is yours.
I've suffered all forms of trauma, and so many forms of these programs between MK Ultra and Monarch and Me Labs, alien love bites, handlers, just an array of narcissistic abusive marriages. And I really became a trauma recovery specialist out of these experiences, as tumultuously painful and black and bleak as they have been. I don't know if it's the will I have or the perseverance I have, but I just needed to find resolution through healing. And I kept repeating this process, James, as you know, probably from our last talk on your show. I would think I would defeat these situations or traumas, and then they would come back in a different form, whether I'd be handled again or another, narcissistic relationship or just some kind of perpetual trauma. And I didn't really learn how to get out of it until somebody diagnosed me with CPTSD from the 53 years of trauma that I had been living through my entire life. It started when I was 3 years old. I've just turned 54. So learning about CPTSD and PTSD was really like the icing on the cake of what was missing in why I couldn't heal completely. And I know we all have, we have the rest of our life to go through layers of healing. So I can't really say I'm healed 100% completely, but it was the biggest help to me to understand that missing piece that so many people don't understand, why they can't heal on certain layers and certain levels that they think they have, just like I thought I had. But there was a missing element to it. And when I started studying PTSD, more than trauma-based mind control, how trauma gets stuck in the body and the levels that we suffer from trauma from programs such as these very nefarious programs, that survivors are not diagnosed properly. They're not diagnosed with this missing element of PTSD. So that was kind of like what catapulted me to learn these new things that I'm teaching now. So I'm considering myself a trauma recovery specialist, and I'm teaching something called transformational spearheaded healing that's it's not a fast program just because it's called Spearheaded, but it's a condensed program to make it more simple for folks to understand the different layers to things as they heal and transform. I'm still teaching the 5 foundations. I'm still teaching Psi self-defense and supernatural abilities development. But I'm teaching something now out of trauma recovery. I'm teaching people who are out of the transformational spearheaded healing into something I'm calling a new life model, which can bring you into spiritual entrepreneurship or living your destiny. So those are the things I'm doing now. New YouTube channel, Jolene Jojo Seebacher. I'm doing a couple of series there. And I'm going to be doing an upcoming workshop with a friend of mine called Transforming Trauma. We're just working out the details right now. So that's just kind of my update in a nutshell. I know it's a long update.
Oh, that's quite all right, Jolene. The past couple of years have been challenging for you on top of what you'd already gone through prior to that. Then the last couple of years was particularly challenging. But out of that, this epiphany came of understanding the true nature of the post-traumatic stress disorder and how you were able to develop these healing modalities.
Yeah, the last number of years, I think the last 4 years of my life have been so overwhelming with triggers I could not get under control. Trust issues, trusting myself. I couldn't find that complete trust in myself. And it just, nothing made sense to me why I was such an intelligent woman, while I walk the walk what I teach, and it works, but there was just these missing elements why the triggers wouldn't stop, or why I couldn't get my own self-trust intact, or even find my authentic identity. And I know that sounds odd because we all think we know who we are, but when you come from a series of trauma or alien abductions or alien love bites or MK Ultra, these are nefarious programs that really mess up your life is usually, planned by these elitists or these alien interceptors designing your life for you. So you really don't even understand your true identity until you get clear-headed, until you really begin a recovery program. And once the recovery program set in and I started working with the PTSD and working with different modalities like EMDR, not EFT, this is EMDR, and something called TRE, along with talk therapy and the EFT stuff, but also recovery classes, recovery programs. That helped me to understand who I was authentically. The more and more clear I got from what had been layered in me in these false belief thinking and feeling patterns, is when I discovered my authenticity. And that, I talk about it on my YouTube channel, James. We empaths who have been victimized in these programs, a lot of us have a lot of supernatural abilities. We have heightened supernatural abilities when we're born, and we're misused in these programs. So empaths are often taught these very false belief systems. We're repressed. We're repressed speaking. We're repressed feeling. We're neglected with emotional neglect. We're faulted if we speak up. We're degraded or hated if we express our feelings or opinions. And we're trying to express things with virtue or resolution or solutions. And meanwhile, you're around, 50-something years of narcissists telling you that's the wrong way to feel, or that's the wrong way to speak, or that's the wrong way to act. But something inward in you is trying to press and prove and seek acceptance or seek the resolution. Meanwhile, you're fighting all this static. So it jumbles up who you think you are authentically. And it takes a deep recovery program to deprogram that, to reprogram a new type of thinking that's not lack-based, fear-based, doubt-based, worry-based, war-based, victim-based, survival-based, and to learn how to live in this different model of thinking so you can start to learn who you are authentically. And that starts with the recovery program. And through this recovery program that I teach, I have clients go out and seek things that maybe they've always wanted to do and people have stopped them, or really speak what they want to say that people have always faulted them or stopped them from speaking, to kind of try to get a groove to where they feel comfortable in themselves, where they feel happy in themselves, where they feel grounded in themselves, and they're like, oh my God, this is what my real me feels like. So when we have breakthroughs like that, which I had like huge breakthroughs finding my authentic self, but when I see my clients go through it, it's like a rebirth process. It's like the old you is dead because that was such a mask you've been wearing around all these people that have been pulling your frequencies down for so long, that when you're in your own vibratory fields of your authentic self, it's just such a different, it is a rebirth. I mean, I'm nothing like I was 2 years ago. I'm completely different. People are going to say, oh, she's cloned, or, whatever they're going to try to say. But no, I mean, I am a completely different person because I dedicated my last 2 years, and especially last year, into a complete recovery program and something I'm teaching as the new life model, and being very dedicated and structured and fearless, not procrastinating. So I'm breaking all the empath boundaries that we're taught. Empaths are taught to be afraid or to be uncomfortable in crowds, to be quiet, to not be gregarious.
To be passive. We're taught to be passive and acquiescent and just soak in all the feelings and vibes of others and, take it on board also. So it becomes essentially a feed for the archons. You made some key points there, Jolene, is the importance of being comfortable in our own skin again and trusting ourselves. And we've all met people in our field. They've got so much to offer. And I went through this period of being shame-based, of being a people pleaser, of being an acquiescer, if that's a word. And once we get into the habit of, not in a boorish or a condescending or a pushy way, but to speak our truth to people that we're comfortable with and thereby expand our comfort zones. And then, like, for example, you doing the YouTube channel, the teachings that you do, other people giving lectures and presentations, that's all in the realm of not in the comfort zone for people. But the only way we can get over that, Jolene, is by the act of doing, by the act of creation, until it becomes a part of us and we don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah, I actually have a theory about us empaths and folks with these abilities, star seeds, light workers, whatever you're going to label, mystic seers. I have a theory that we are supposed to be gregarious. We teach ethics, morals, virtues, values. We teach expression. It's just now time to step out of these fear and lack-based modes to learn how to communicate effectively and to express without what I call the CRAP syndrome, the CRAP syndrome, criticism, rejection, abandonment, and punishment. So if you can learn how to speak your values, who you are, what you believe in, without taking offense of criticism, rejection, abandonment, or punishment. You're breaking the empath mold. We're really not afraid of people. We're not afraid to speak. We have a lot of value to teach. We have a lot of ways to teach people how to communicate effectively, but we've just been programmed to think that's not true. So I'm standing by that theory that empaths are not afraid of crowds. I teach beautiful ways to repel energy or to get the energy of others off of you. I teach one of my last videos on YouTube was called empathing, or karmic enmeshments with people, how to know the difference between what you're empathing on versus what are your feelings. If you're empathing on the collective, if you're empathing off of your ex-alien love bite, or if they're your own feelings and emotions and thoughts. So, yeah, I have that theory about empaths. We are supposed to be the counselors, teachers, healers, and leaders of the world. We have solutions. We're ethical. We're moralistic. We can teach communication. We're good at it. We're not bad at it. People around us we're the bad communicators.
Another thing also that you touch on is the fact that these archontic forces, they identify, in fact, they know that when an empath is coming into the earthly plane again, and they orchestrate and set things up so that person coming in gets hammered from every direction, from day one. And what it does is it teaches that empath not to trust themselves. On the one hand, it's okay to take everything on board in kind of an overcompensating fashion. We want to help. We want to heal this person. We want to help this person reintegrate. But again and again, it's at the expense of ourselves. Everything is an outward projection, very little coming back to the empath. And what happens is that empath then becomes vulnerable to the predation of narcissists, to archontically, malignly influenced individuals. They're in such a mode, a conditioned, patterned mode of giving and trying to heal others, they leave themselves wide open, Jolene. So what you're talking about is absolutely brilliant. We have to be able to put up boundaries. And because if we can't work on our first circle, work on ourselves, excuse me, we're worse than useless to others, because then we can be manipulated into becoming a tool and an enabler.
Yeah. Well, with the Archon forces and these nefarious forces, including AI and all of these technologies hurting TIs, targeted individuals, we're all uploaded at this point in time. I mean, there's no coincidence that our cell phones match the identical hertz frequency of the human brain. So between archonic feeding or the AI interface with empaths, many of us, and I was guilty of this, we sit in the pain or the worry or the lack or the fear or the victimhood or the martyrdom or the anger or the, this isn't fair, or the survival. We sit there instead of doing something because A, we don't realize there are archontic forces feeding on us. B, we don't realize it could be AI interfacing us with remote neural monitoring or whatever. But the key factor is, even if you don't know what the source is that's bringing your vibrations down, if you're depressed or angry or victimized, empaths have a problem procrastinating to change sitting in that pain. They will sit in the pain, they will sit in the worry, sit in the fear and the doubt and the distrust. This is when you really have to push yourself out of those frequencies. And people tell me, Jojo, how do you do that when, you've been targeted for 10 years straight and you're exhausted and you got insomnia and everywhere you go? I know it's hard, you guys. I know how hard it is to let yourself sit in that pain and make these excuses of like, I don't have any energy to push through. But you have to. Even if you put on simple music and dance. Even if you get, I use lots of tools. I use little ringing bells, water, that I write things on my cups and program my water, my foundations. You have to push through the pain that you decide to sit in. If you are going to sit in that pain, it's only going to get worse. The doubt's going to get worse. The worry's going to get worse. The fear will get worse. But if you can find 1 ounce of strength to go dance, put on a song and dance in your house, or, jog in place, or go outside and take a walk, or hug your cat or dog. It's hard to meditate in those places of pain, fear, guilt, worry, shame, victimization. It's hard to meditate. So you have to get your body moving. You have to move that body to start changing the frequency. Reach out to someone. Reach out, laugh, find something funny. And I don't promote TV a lot, but, find a sitcom or something to laugh. You have to push. Sing. These are frequencies that you can lift, and you don't have to sit in the pain, fear, guilt, victimization, doubt, but you got to start somewhere. And most people don't, James, and that's what I want to teach folks, that procrastination will kill the empath. Procrastination will kill anybody, really. It will never exceed you in life. It will never make changes for you. And in empaths, procrastination is a terrifying place to sit. But there's a fear of doing. So they'd rather sit in the pain and procrastinate and say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. But by the end of the day, they're so guilty. They say, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, they procrastinate. At the end of the day, they're guilty again, and then it's this redundant cycle of guilt, shame, fear, doubt, and whatever. So teach yourself, any empath listening, anybody needing trauma recovery listening, the first thing to overcome procrastination is to take the hardest thing you have to do. If that's making a phone call, writing a letter, do it first thing in the morning. And if you wake up dense or traumatized, or you're in repetition compulsion from the victimization, get some music on, dance, move your body, and get into a recovery program. Somebody that can teach you the steps of getting out of these layers that you're trapped in empathically, these enmeshments that you're trapped in.
What happens sometimes with empaths, Jolene, is we talk about different types of addictions. We talk about food addictions, and that's essentially a mood-altering behavior. Some people's drug of choice is alcohol, others is illicit drugs. For other people, and I'm not attaching any game or any shame or making any kind of a value judgment. It's just the nature of the matrix that we reside in, Jolene, that for some people, eating or overeating or indulging in rich foods is a mood-altering behavior because it makes them feel different. It makes them feel momentarily better. And so the point of relevance is, with empaths, what has happened sometimes is they've expanded their comfort zone to absorb that which by most normal standards would be deemed uncomfortable, taking on the pain of others, taking on the abuse and the manipulation and narcissistic projection of others. And just like any kind of addiction, when one becomes habituated to it, Jolene, daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, it becomes their fate. It becomes their destiny. And they don't even realize that they've become addicted to the emotions. It's not the process. It's the neural pathways, the indoctrinary system, etc., has been habituated to enmesh people in these self-limiting modes. And procrastination, like you pointed out, is an absolute killer because the wounded empath fears more than anything, not living up to their own potential. So many of us know that we can make a difference. We can make an impact. We have a unique skill set that we can bring to the table. Our biggest obstacle is ourselves sometimes, Jolene. We have to learn and navigate around ourselves. So we get into this process of taking these steps, like you pointed out, get into the process of doing, of creativity, even if it means breaking up the routine by singing and dancing and acting goofy by any kind of normal standard. But for that moment, what we're doing is we're changing the frequency. And by so doing, too, it's a loud statement to the archontic forces, Jolene, that no, you're not going to malignly, invisibly, if that's the word, manipulate me and keep me in a down frequency and put me in a state where I'm just going to be a constant feed to you guys. I'm going to be in my own skin, comfortable in my own energy field. And that's another key point you pointed out, is because the empath, because they take on so much, they forget what their own energy body is like. They forget what their own energy feels like. And because of the shame-based programming, many of us are uncomfortable with our own feelings and our own energies anyway.
Yeah, these archontic forces. I think I wrote like a blog I don't know, 3 years ago maybe, on like the protein that they get, the sweets that they get from our emotions, like protein. I can't remember how I wrote the article. But if you think about like your anger or depression or fear as food, like if you think of your fear as the protein food to the archon, you're going to think about utilizing something against that fear instead of feeding the archons, right? You think about like shame or guilt as their sweets. You want to stop feeding them. So yeah, we can start with like exercise and dance and singing. That's temporary though, right, James? That's not like your quick fix. I mean, it helps. It's kind of like Band-Aids for a while, but it's getting yourself on something structured and disciplined. And empaths do not like that either. They don't like structure or discipline. Now, I didn't like it at all. I mean, I've never really liked it. Even when I worked, 9 to 5 jobs, I was always very creative of how I would structure my 9 to 5 job and make people a lot of money. But with the empath mode, so we start out with giving them these little things to just jumpstart them to get the idea of change. Energy alchemy is what I'm calling it. Energy alchemy, changing the energy. But I use a 9-point new life model that the empath has to follow. They can switch the 9 things up during the day as long as they hit those 9 points during their day, because they don't like structure, because procrastination is an issue. So we take these 9 areas of self and we start with 2 to 20 minutes a day. Most people that come to me so traumatized, they can only do a couple of minutes a day on each of these 9 areas. But you end up building it up, and then it becomes your lifestyle. So, I'll tell you what, I mean, if I didn't go through what I went through the last 2 years, especially this last year, I would have never devised some of these systems that I'm teaching. And I've beta tested them on several people who have had enormous success. So it's not a quick fix. I will never tell anyone that this is the easiest thing. Transforming trauma and leaving abuse will feel more painful in the beginning of your recovery than the actual abuse. And let me repeat that. When you get into recovery from abuse, your first several months of recovery will feel worse than the actual abuse you survived. All right? I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. It is hard work, but there are new formulas to this, and you can change your whole life, folks. And it's not to say that all of your abuse goes away and all of those memories fade away and you're perfect. You learn to coexist with some of these very nefarious, traumatic things that have happened in your life. I want to be very real about this because there are some things, especially with SRA and sexual trauma and surviving alien love by dark side of Cupid relationships with narcissists are the three cruelest forms of trauma to recover from. And I'm not putting that above any other type of trauma. Abuse is abuse, but I find those three are the hardest to recover from.
The wounds are so deep-seated and potentially soul-destroying and certainly soul-fragmenting. A big part of this, as you know, Jolene, is the reintegration of bringing back to us, which is our essential part of our essential soul matrix, and leaving out whatever doesn't belong and filtering out and doing it in a way which processes and heals and moves blocked traumatic energy. It is a process. The inner shadow work is about the hardest thing anyone could do because, again, the part of the empathic trap is, although we don't talk about it much, is the self-recrimination, the despairing thoughts, and at times the feeling of defeatism and hopelessness, because the underlying fear of an empath is not being able to fulfill, is having an unfulfilled life, not doing what you know you're capable of doing because of all these problems, procrastination, and all the unhealed trauma being a big part of that. Now, you spoke about the dark side of Cupid, narcissistic aspect. Now, that is a real key aspect. So many people have dealt with that before. It can feel at the moment to be soul destroying. Could you talk about, from an empathic standpoint and also from a healing modality standpoint, both ends of the spectrum, kind of what that feels like and how one detaches from that in a nutshell, without going into all the details and whatnot, but just in a general sense, how does one pull back from that abyss? Because I've been there myself.
I just spoke
not
about
from I should point out, not from a narcissistic person, but just from the alien love bite pain alone, which was bad enough. I can't even imagine what it's like to be subjected to the alien love bite at the hands of a narcissistic, archontically influenced person. But anyway, please continue.
Yeah, there is such karmic enmeshment with alien love bites. In fact, we've got the emotional, the mental, the physical, the spiritual with the soul, and then the psychic enmeshments. Those are six. That's six? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm missing one. I just spoke about it on my YouTube show. There are 6 types of enmeshments you get with these relationships that have to be broken in layers. And I have formulas for all of these, formulas for even detaching from these individuals, formulas for even dialoguing with these individuals. Trying to think: emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, sexual, and psychic. So those are 6 layers that you actually have to break the karmic enmeshment. And these love bite relationships, you know, so many people think these are your soulmates and twin flames, but they're not. To me, a soulmate twin flame is when each party is helping one another mirror their light and their dark. So they're both healing the light and the dark within one another and reflecting with one another, working with one another. But these love bite relationships, they're so designed, and these dark sides of Cupid that Eve talks about. So, I mean, if it wasn't for Eve Lorgen, I don't know where half of us women and men would be. Honest to God. Thank God for Eve Lorgen and her work. And And I've even said, James, I've suffered tremendous trauma in my life, tremendous abuse. And I mean, I've had rape counseling and all kinds of counseling throughout my life, but surviving this narcissistic, abusive marriage was the worst trauma I've ever survived, because it was psychological warfare. And, you know, this is something that soldiers come back from wars with, the PTSD. These are war tactics. These people, these alien, oversold beings in human bodies are doing to you. And the enmeshments that take place are so obsessive, and you don't understand the obsessiveness unless you read Eve's books. Read her books, the Alien Love Bite and the Dark Side of Cupid. Go on her website, learn what they're about, and then get into a narcissistic abuse recovery, because all of these programs revolve around narcissists, and the Alien Love Bite is probably one of the most dangerous. I did a series with Kev Baker on Truth Frequency Radio. He's got like 6 episodes of me doing a series on narcissistic abuse recovery with the Alien Love Bite. And I forget what I was going to say, but you know, you need a recovery program to dissolve these enmeshments emotionally, mentally, physically, sexually, spiritually, and psychically, because you may not even be around this person anymore, and you still have the enmeshment sexually or psychically, and you're not, like, you don't even understand what's happening in yourself. So, you know, these are very, very, very scary to understand what's happening in yourself, because you're so confused. And if you can find the help through Eve, or somebody like myself who are really experts with narcissism. She's the expert with the actual alien love bite. I'm the expert with the narcissistic or the criminal mind side of things. I'm just the trauma recovery specialist that kind of spans all types of programming, not just alien love bite.
The narcissistic programming is so deep-seated because it's a constant psychological warfare attack, that it's not just the narcissistic abuser in your face or energetically connected to you. It's whatever archontic parasitic influence is working through him or her. So it all plugs into a collective hive mind consciousness where these beings operating in these unseen realms, they can access our memories. They can plug into prior trauma and know about the events that transpired, the memories of how all that past trauma came. So that's something they can plug into. And the most nefarious aspect, or one of the most nefarious aspects of the narcissistic abuse, Jolene, as you know, is how they get into your head and create all this self-doubt. And the self-doubt takes on a life of its own with the OCD thought loops and the intrusive thoughts just pecking away, hammering away at our self-worth, at our confidence, to the point where we're frozen with indecision. Even the smallest decisions we have to make, we have to like ponder it and, you know, with the whys and the wherefores and weigh everything out before we can take the smallest decision. That's the nefarious aspect to this whole narcissistic abuse.
The looshing, right?
Yes.
The looshing off of all of these 6 areas of the individual. I found some statistics going through this recovery program. I mean, I interviewed resource centers. I went to special functions on domestic violence, and I wanted to really introduce narcissistic abuse to the Senate in my state and try to get laws changed. But while I was doing this, you know, I mean, I knew the narcissistic element revolved around MK Ultra, Monarch, and all Me Labs, Alien Love Bites. But, you know, I was doing work on the domestic violence side of things, so I could be, you know, accepted in the society and community. You can't go to your resource center and talk about alien love bites, right? So I learned these very frightening statistics, James, and your listeners may be shocked. 1 out of 10 people walking around in your town, 1 out of 10 are a narcissist. So out of all those 1 out of 10 people around the world, up to 30% of those people are sociopaths. That means they could care less about your feelings. They could care less if you live or die. They can't get an accurate statistics on this, but they assume 20 up to 30% of narcissistic abusees are murdered. Murdered. Again, they can't get an accurate statistic. 85% attempt or commit suicide. 85% of victims attempt or commit suicide. And here was the ringer that really got me with what my state of Pennsylvania calls emotional abuse, that I'm trying to get the laws changed to call it narcissistic abuse or psychological torture or psychological abuse. 85% of women say it would have been easier to be raped or beaten instead of living through psychological manipulation, because the enmeshments were so, they've lost their identities. They were crushed, broken. Now, those are alarming, alarming statistics. Alarming. And this is looshing off men and women in these very nefarious, narcissistic programs and designed relationships from these alien interceptors working with our elitists.
Yes, and the end result is all these deeply damaged and traumatized people, and sometimes, unfortunately, the trauma and the manipulation carries over from not just one, but multiple lifetimes, layer upon layer. So when we come into this earthly plane, once again, incarnated into this world, the way the Archon set up, and I don't want to paint too bleak of a picture, folks. I'm just pointing out the cosmic chessboard nature of how this matrix system works, so we can navigate around it, so we can learn once again to trust ourselves. And as long as we've been involved in this, Jolene, we still make, you know, I mean, I trusted this guy to come on my show, then he blindsided me with a live stream fundraiser, right? I should have just hung up on the guy, but instead I sat there like a deer in the headlights and just put up with all this narcissistic megalomaniac crap, pardon my Anunnaki, right? And what was supposed to be a pre-recorded interview, I should have just said, to heck with you and all your viewers. I'm not going to let you disrespect me the way you just have. But I rolled over, I acquiesced, and I sat there, you know. And the point of relevance is when we allow these others, they're strong-willed for a reason. They've got this archontic influence working through them. They've got this energetic force working through them, tapping into our most unhealed parts of our soul psyche matrix. And indecision, where I just couldn't say, to hell with this guy, I'm going to hang up on it. I don't care about his live stream and all his viewers he's trying to mooch money off of. Not my problem, right? Didn't do it. I just sat there. And this is quite recently, Jolene. So well, I'm a recent victim of my own procrastination. So I'm a living example in the recent past of what you're talking about.
But it's not procrastination to me, James. I think what we have to realize, it's going back into that fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we're taken off guard. It doesn't mean we're procrastinating. So we're human beings. We're human beings with organic consciousness, with heart space. We want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes we get caught in that fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
And it's just old programming. And you're one of the most ethical, virtuous, moralistic individuals I've ever met. That's why I really,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. You are just high honor. And that probably was your pretense of sitting there, because you're ethical and moralistic, and you were like, yes. So I wouldn't call it procrastination. I just fell a little bit victim to that too. And in a store the other day where somebody really insulted me, and I froze. I froze because and sometimes maybe that is the best thing for us, because I didn't want to trigger out and say something rude back. But I froze, and I didn't really stand up for myself in an integritous way. I just was silent. I didn't know what to say. I froze. And after the woman left, the store clerk was like, "Are you all right? Darling, are you all right?" And because I was just so quiet, I just couldn't believe what this person had just said to me, and I said nothing back. So I think that's just our humanness, James.
Yes.
We're not fighters. We don't want to start problems. And sometimes that empath mode comes in, or our virtues step in, or we just freeze. I'm still learning.
Yeah, and there's no shame in that. I only bring it up because it just underscores the point we've been making about this energetic force, how it can pop up. It's a many-headed hydra, can pop up in all forms, and especially in the form of a narcissistic abuser. And the narcissistic force working through people into the targeted individual in a narcissistic sense.
Well, think about it. These people they're programmed, right?
Yes,
they're programmed with
They're a conduit. They're a conduit for this. It's essentially an archontic force, countless eons old in the making, plugging into a previously traumatized person, oftentimes a person completely unaware and unsuspecting of where this narcissistic abuse is coming from, because they're already in the empathic mode of being understanding, given the benefit of the doubt, wanting to help others, right? And this system, it exploits those who want to be of the most service. That's the insidious part of this, Jolene. Yeah,
we wanted to be good wives, good husbands, right? I wanted to be a good wife, and I'm sure all of us can share these same stories, whether we're husbands or wives that have survived these types of relationships. It's just a looshing force it's ancient, right? It's ancient. And now they're actually mimicking those creatures in a synthetic form, James. I don't know if they're archons running the synths or the NPCs, the non-player characters, the Geordie Rose synths. You heard it? You know who Geordie Rose is?
I know the NPC concept that Randy Moggins talks about. Could you tell me about that individual and how it ties in?
Geordie Rose he's like the Elon Musk of Canada, and he's created artificial human beings, artificial humans. In fact, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, he did this big conference, and he was like, everybody in the audience, look to your left. Now look to your right. A year from now, one of those are going to be a synthetic human. So my theory, especially growing up as a program kid, I spent quite a few summers in Canada for training for the United States Olympics. And even Donald Marshall talks about the cloning centers up there in Canada off of Lake Ontario. And, that's where I went for training, and in those logging towns. all those cloning centers there. So Geordie Rose is a Canadian up there who's created synthetic humans. And I believe the AI has programmed them very similar to that NPC type of being, where they're programmed with the directive like a video game. They're programmed with the directive to be warlike or harm. Now, we're living in a matrix here, James, so think about it. These are like avatar beings, whether they're human with archontic programming or whether they're synths like Geordie Rose has created. They have them all over Japan and Korea. I mean, you could already buy a synthetic human and sex doll. And
yes, it's a big thing in Japan where a guy will bring home to his family his robotic girlfriend, and she's got a name, she's got a personality, she's got a bio, and they take him out to dinner and all this other stuff. So that's already going on, and it's a perfect analog, as you point out, of the NPCs, where these organic portals, as Tom Montauk would call them, they've already been pre-programmed. They've already got this archontic demiurgic force working through them, so they can be counted on to say the most gaslighting, narcissistic thing at the right or the wrong time from your point of view, right? And now the ability to create this synthetic avatar. And it's interesting that you should point out the term avatar, because in an upcoming commentary I'm coming out with, I point out how, okay, we come under the oversoul, and there are aspects of us, counterpart aspects of us, a little further ahead of the game, a little further down the track in their alternate reality, in their timeline, and they may be carbon, well, I wouldn't say carbon copies, but they could be our counterparts, or they could be ET versions of ourselves, whatever the case may be. But here in this reality, where we're making inroads and we're trying to catch up and reintegrate eventually with our counterparts, it's almost like avatars of ourselves were created here, Jolene, where I don't want to say I'm an avatar, you're an avatar, because we have the soul mind of our oversoul expression working through us. But we have to work through all these handicaps, and that some of our counterparts have already had to bust through. So that's an encouraging thing, because all one winner needs to know is another winner did it first, right? So, you know, when we talk about avatars, there's two ways of looking at it. That these avatars, these matrix sentinel types of all stripes, and ourselves in this kind of matrix simulation type of reality. But anyhow, we've reached the end of a fascinating and a thought-provoking first segment with our guest, Jolene Seebacher. And we're just getting started. Jolene, how could people find you on Facebook and YouTube?
Under my name, Jolene Jojo Seebacher, on Facebook or YouTube, Instagram, Jojo_Seebacher. And I run all kinds of specials right now, James. I'm doing such fun things up on my YouTube channel. So I ask everybody to like and subscribe and click the notification bell, because that's really where I'm changing into my career and bringing it into YouTube. And I'm going to be doing master classes and things like that. I'm going to shift away from social media and get on to more podcasts and master classes and YouTube stuff. At least that's the direction I think I'm going, because every time I announce something, something changes. So far, YouTube and Facebook, guys, and Instagram.
And to our dear listeners out there, if you like what we do, if you believe in what we do, please go to thecosmicswitchboard.com, sign up and become a member, and we'll see you at the top of the next segment.